Savannah Sellers now, who's been following this pretty closely as well. A couple things, Savannah, you and I need to talk through here. First and foremost is the details of this thing. It's not a done deal necessarily yet. We got 120 days until it's really kind of put into motion. Walk us through what needs to happen here.
Yeah, it's not a done deal at all yet, Yasmin. And I know you've been talking about Trump is signing the TikTok deal. He was not signing the deal. As we just saw and as you smartly explained, he signed an executive order that sort of blesses the deal and says, as the president, I am good with this as what is known as a qualified divestiture. That's the language in the law. That's basically the president saying this to me qualifies as what we needed to happen behind the scenes in terms of the ownership of this app in order to meet the law. That's really all that has happened, though, Yasmin. So first, let's just talk about just from a straight up business deal perspective, right? You have the companies that are actually the ones involved, the one that has something to sell, being ByteDance with TikTok. And then you also have this company that is essentially going to buy it, really more so invest in it, because ByteDance, as you can see on your screen, still going to hold just under 20%, which is what the law stipulates there. So you have these companies investing in it. That, as you know, is going to be a deal done with a bunch of lawyers, probably in a boardroom somewhere. That will mean the deal is done. However, prior to that, I do also want to point out, we have not heard from China, at least not today, and not all that recently. It's been about a week since that call between President Trump and President Xi, which we heard the president refer to several times and say that it was a great call, say that he gave the go-ahead completely, say that he has this tremendous respect for President Xi. But we have not heard from them any more recently than that, and we also have not heard from ByteDance. So those are details we are most certainly waiting on to understand how and if this develops. In addition to that, it was sort of a bummer to me to not learn a little bit more about who these investors are. We did hear the president once again mention Michael Dell, Rupert Murdoch, and then he said 4 or 5 world-class investors. On your screen right now is exactly what I just mentioned, the Murdochs, Mr. Dell, and then as well as, of course, Larry Ellison. We've known he would be involved. He has been involved, I should note, because of Oracle, his company that hosts the data. So now the question is, how does this shake out between his investing, how much is that, versus just kind of hosting the data? We still want to know a lot more about that.
So the president was asked if this is just going to kind of be all MAGA-friendly content at one point on TikTok. And he jokingly said, listen, I would love it to be 100% MAGA-friendly content, but I'm going to be fair to all sides here. There is, though, a question of the algorithm, as I mentioned, coming to you earlier, and how this thing is really going to look to TikTok users who we know are very dedicated to the way in which TikTok is right now. So is it going to be different?
Yeah, I know. I noted that moment as well, Yasmin, and he did end up saying, no, everyone will be treated fairly. But at first he did say, I'd love if it would be on 100% MAGA content, making a joke there that was received, it sounded like, with laughs in the room. I think it's a really great question, because you mentioned at the top, and this is something that has certainly been said, a senior White House official told us this directly at NBC News, that they are going to retrain the algorithm on U.S. user data for a whole bunch of reasons that I don't want to make anybody's eyes glaze over. I won't go into the full tech of it, but that is a little confusing from a tech perspective, and a little bit it makes you question how real that is and what that actually looks like in practice. But when you hear the words retrain an algorithm, you think, okay, so is the algorithm going to be different? That's certainly a valid question for users, and it is also a question that does whatever the ownership structure, and really, I think more importantly, the day-to-day leadership of this company. Does the CEO stay the same? What are meetings looking like in terms of edicts that are kind of given to employees? Sure. Does the leadership structure end up having a way to influence the editorial on the app in some way? I also think that that's a valid question. I will note what Yamiche said there with people calling him. I thought it was pretty interesting to hear the president himself say that he had heard from small businesses, and that was part of changing his calculus, that they said, I will go out of business if I don't have this tool. That, to me, is a win for TikTok, because let me tell you, Yasmin, I was in D.C. a ton following all this. TikTok was flying in creators, small business owners, putting them there on the Hill to try to pressure, and it seems like that might have worked a little bit.
This is just an answer that you may not have, but I'm curious if you do have it, which is, do we have any idea of any of these companies? Of course, Oracle being one that has been mentioned over and over again, and we know they have more of a concrete role in this whole thing versus the Murdoch name and the Dell Technologies. But if they're kind of planning on hiring separate arms to run their TikTok side of the business, their TikTok side of the investments?
No, and that's a really good question. It's also interesting because as we start to get this picture of it, right, Yasmin, it's like a mix of technology companies and then also just like money guys, right? Like people with a lot of money, investment firms that really have no other connection necessarily to running a technology company or to, having any real, understanding maybe of how this algorithm works, what this looks like. Certainly one of the biggest questions, and I can tell you this is what people at TikTok are also thinking, is what does this mean for how this company actually works? I mentioned, does the CEO stay the same? Also just, again, day-to-day structure. If TikTok US, for all intents and purposes, becomes kind of this new entity broken off from ByteDance, as a whole, how does that shape up? I mean, you even think about, Yasmin, little things, like what does this mean for all the employee stock and things like that? Like there's so many questions about what this ends up looking like.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.